Okay, so today is Friday, and I'm working on this turd. So what we're doing today is I have this real shitty wiring to my injectors, and the pigtails like underneath this tape are cracking, which can cause a massive misfire issue, which is no bueno. It didn't used to be like that. These used to actually be nicely tucked up underneath the intake runners. But when I did all this, I was originally going to run a factory ECU with the bigger injectors. So I needed to put resistors in line, and it just doesn't look good. I don't like it. So I went on Amazon, everybody's best friend, and I ordered these, which are brand new EV1 injector pigtails. So we're going to basically cut this off, see how much wiring I got to work with. I tried to get the longest pigtails possible, and try to retuck this harness and make it to where these don't crack like they are. Like, I promise you they're cracked. That's why we're doing this. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I lied. I know I've seen cracks in these. So, yeah, there's cracks, I promise. So I'm going to try and set the camera up somewhere where you actually get to see some stuff and get working on it. Okay, so I think I got you guys set up pretty decently. The way you remove EV1 injector clips are pretty easy. You just got this little push button thing. It's more like a tab, really. You push on that, it pops out. I kind of wish I could de-pin these connectors because they're kind of better. I don't know if you can see this. This is more like a wetter pack style connector. It's actually got a rubber insulator in there that you can't really see. The only thing I don't like though is that the end's not supported. You can see that this is a little bit different. It's the same injector clip, it's a different take on it. This is actually supported into the socket, but they are the same socket. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and just make sure that this actually clips onto the injector, because it really suck if it didn't. It's always good to double check. Yep, okay, so that fits. Cool. So now we will pop these off. So all the wires are different colors for these per injector. So you got white with blue, yellow with black, black and green, blue and whatever. All that matters though is that one side's red and the other side is not. So basically this is a power and a signal, I believe. And so you, oh, there's one of the cracks. So that would be a misfire down the road that I would spend hours chasing. And it's pretty simple, it's just right there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to untape these and try to cut this as short on the resistor as possible so I have as much wire as possible. Okay, so my air compressor's running, which is kind of unfortunate, so it's kind of loud. I don't know how much you guys will be hearing that. What you can do is I heat shrinked over this, but you can kind of feel where the soft wire is and where the solder is. In worst case scenario, just cut it short like that. The heat shrink might slide off. I don't think this one's gonna, so I might have to cut it back even shorter, but I really don't want to. So I'm going to try and save as much of this as possible. Because like I said, you know, I want to tuck this again, and the tuck stuff, you kind of need it to be kind of on the longer side. Yeah, so I guess we're going to have to cut there. Now, of course, this loom is in the way. I really should have heat shrunk this back down, but didn't have that available to me at the time. And I want to cut these even, so the pigtail goes on even, just like that. But I really, really want to tape this back, but I don't have any tape right here, so we'll do this instead. We'll just hook it. That way the loom doesn't swallow that hole. Okay, so now I'm going to start stripping these wires back. This is a really basic stripping tool. It's really actually for house wire. It's not my favorite kind. I like the one that automatically splits stuff, but those are expensive. I don't feel like going to buy one, and I don't have one, so this will do just fine. This is pretty thin wire, so probably about 18 gauge. And then this boop, and it's stripped. And then we'll do the signal side. And I try to strip these as evenly as possible so that it looks good when you solder it and it doesn't look like a mess. But I'm also not perfect, which is why I'm redoing this right now. So pick and choose your battles, I guess. Okay, now we got the pigtail. You should always try to twist wires when you can. Basically, it just makes it bend easier. So since I'm going to be trying to tuck this harness and I want it to, you know, turn down at a pretty tight angle, If I just left them straight, they'd actually crack like this. So you twist when you can, because it makes the wire more flexible. Like if you buy a high-end wiring harness, like the core of this harness, not these individual wires, are actually twisted so you can bend the harness easily. And again, pigtails always come perfect in length, so I'm going to shorten these to be the same. Okay, so now I got these stripped down. There we go, focus. And we're going to be soldering today. This is my gas-powered Dremel soldering iron. This is awesome to have because you don't need to switch tools in your heat shrink and solder. The same tool can do it both because it's gas-powered and it gets really hot. And there's actually a cutout on the side where some flame will come out, or just radiating heat, so you can actually melt heat shrink. Pretty useful thing. Okay, and here's the solder I'm going to be using. Super fine stuff. I know you can get big rolls of solder. I personally hate that stuff because I can never melt it efficiently. Especially on the fine wire, you don't need huge solder. You're just going to be melting the solder and burning the wire. Because you don't want to burn the insulator off the wire because it obviously isn't insulated anymore. So you want the solder to melt super easy and just kind of have your shit together when it's ready to go. Okay, so now on these pigtails, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put some heat shrink on them before I solder them together to hold the braid together. Because you don't want this coming apart because it kind of just defeats the purpose of doing it. So I'm going to twist it up somewhere I like it. And you want to use heat shrink that's not, super tiny. You want it to actually fit snug on here. This isn't even good heat shrink. Good heat shrink actually has a layer of, I guess, glue is the best thing to call it, on the inside of it that helps it seal super tight onto this. Okay, so we're gonna solder, or use our soldering iron on this to melt it down. So the way that these work is you have like the flow adjuster, and then these are really hard to light if you just try to click it. You want to crack it half open and then light it. I know I lit it first try. I'm not trying to show off, but trust me, it was hard. It took me a while to master that art. So here's the heat shrink. There's that hole I was talking about, and you just want to slowly go over it. You don't want to hold it in one spot too long because you'll actually burn through the heat shrink. And what that does is it makes it bubbly and not tight. You also want to try to avoid touching it like I am right now because I'm shaking because, things always are harder when you're recording yourself. And there we go. That is relatively shrunk on there. Turn this off, you just unlock it. And put it on something plastic on your car so it melts it. But there, so you can see how flexible this is now, and it's not going to come unbraided. So now we're going to try to solder this stuff together. Like I said, I'm assuming red goes to red, black will go to the signal wire. I actually don't know if injectors have polarity, but I'm just going to assume that they do and try to do it right. So I don't know how well you guys can see this, but basically I'm going to try to shove these wires together and then twist them. And what that does is you add a mechanical connection to your solder joint. It makes it a little bit stronger. You could crimp this. I really wouldn't recommend it. There's crimps in the factory harness, but the factory harness sucks, so take it as you will. I always prefer to solder because I don't know, I feel like it's better. That could just be me trying to be a hot boy and thinking it's better. I don't know. So I almost just fucked up there. I didn't put more heat shrink in here, so I need some smaller heat shrink to insulate each wire individually after soldering it. So right now I'm using one of those Harbor Freight Universal kits, and they actually sell these pre-cut little ones, which is super nice because I don't have to cut anything. And this makes my life a lot easier. So what we're going to do is going to shove it over a little one because that's just the easier one to shove it over. And we're going to shove it as far down as possible because you'll start melting the end of this way before you want to. And if you do that, it kind of sucks. Just make sure you can still reach it when you're done. Make sure that stays folded over so you don't lose it. And I just lost a pigtail, so let's try this again for round 2. Oh, thank God my compressor finally turned off. So try to. The wire on this harness is actually relatively stiff, and the pigtails is relatively soft. This could be a reason why this harness was cracking where it was, because it's got relatively stiff wire. For car stuff, you want soft wire because it, obviously doesn't crack. Okay, we'll try twisting that. This is brutal on your fingers, by the way. Your fingers will occasionally get stabbed doing this. But there you can see it's twisted together. And I'm going to fire up the soldering iron and try to melt some solder in there now. So when you're soldering, you obviously want to get the soldering iron nice and hot, which is what's great about these gas ones, is they get hot quick. And you want to what's called tin the tip, which is where as soon as this gets hot enough, you put some solder on the tip. And basically this makes a good contact between this and the wire. And you don't dab solder on the soldering iron and kind of wipe it on the wire. What you want to do is actually heat the wire up enough to melt the solder. And that's what tinning the tip helps with. And if you've ever TIG welded, this is very similar to TIG welding as far as the hand movements go. Let's see. Okay, it's moving on me. Soldering is much easier when you have like a third hand, which is a soldering tool. That wasn't really a joke. Okay, so about halfway done with this joint. There we go. Want to get a nice solid solder on there. You can tell that a solder is done good when it's shiny. If your solder is dull, that means it wasn't the best joint in the world. Typically you'll be fine. That's really fucking hot. But you want to try and get it... Oh man. So what happened here is this heat shrink actually shrunk from that, which is unfortunate. So I think I might have to start over, or I might be able to free that up by cutting it with a razor blade. Let's try cooling that down first. Okay, so I'm going to very carefully take a razor blade and kind of drag it along this heat shrink. I want to just cut through the heat shrink and not the insulation on the wire under it. This is kind of a oopsie I fucked up moment that I'm trying to fix. Ideally, you just don't do this, and you're good at what you do, but we're not all that fortunate now, are we? Okay, I think I got it to where it will move again. Yeah, okay. So you can see I just kind of slid it, and now it will actually help me slide it over the solder joint, which I got a little fat, but it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Good memes. Okay, we'll slide that over. And you want to get the heat shrink to where it is slipped over both ends of the wire with insulation. Air compressor just kicked on again, sorry about that. Because this stuff does obviously shrink, and if it shrinks off and you have some exposed wire, it's not going to do its job. Okay, so we're going to fire up the soldering iron one more time. Lock it in, and this one's not going to take a lot to heat, to shrink it. So we're just going to move super quick. We don't want to burn through it. We don't want to melt any insulation. We just want it to isolate these wires. Because if these cross, your injector's going to be stuck open and you're going to feel like a dumbass. Trust me, because I don't feel like a dumbass. Okay, now on to the signal side. Remember, put your heat shrink on like I almost just forgot to again. And I'm going to try to get this one down a little bit further so that I don't have the same issue. So, just slide it on and down. So basically what happened last time is I got the wires a little bit too hot, and that obviously prematurely melted my heat shrink. So I'm going to try to avoid that this time and keep my cool. Shove them together and twist. Okay, so this loom is fighting me, so I'm going to grab some tape and tape it back real quick. Okay, so this is just a scrap of some like 1/2-inch painter's tape, and I'm going to scrunch this way back just so it's super out of the way, and try to wrap it around the wire. The reason why it looks so scraggly is because the roll of tape I just pulled it off is about 5 years old, and was not feeling coming off the roll. So I did kind of a different joint here because you can't actually twist this pigtail, which is what helps make the straight-on connections easy, because you can twist it after. This one I kind of wrapped and folded over, which is fine, it's just not consistent, but this part gets hidden by the loom anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Okay, so we'll prop that up like that, fire up the soldering iron, lock it in, And I'm going to turn the heat to about medium. The issue with these is they actually run through gas kind of quick, at least this one does. So keeping the heat consistent is kind of hard. Okay, we're going to tin the tip, and we're going to start soldering. Okay, I think I burned the insulator a little bit less that time. Still definitely got it a little bit though. My heat shrink tube didn't start melting. Well, actually it just started doing it, but I caught it, so that's fine. Blow on it to cool it off. And now we'll slide the heat shrink over. Perfect. This one turned out a little bit better than the 12 volt inside. Now let's melt that on. And that is one connector fixed. From there, we'll let this tape off, and this should spring kind of forward. And what I'll probably end up doing is just electrical taping this back on, which isn't preferred. I also forgot to put heat shrink on this side so I could heat shrink this down. I wonder if I could actually pop these pins out real quick and do that. Okay, well I can't get it deep in, so we're just going to forget everything that I just said. And we're just going to lay that over there. Luckily the harness is still labeled number 1, so I know where that goes. And I guess I could heat that up to make it look a little bit nicer. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat that on the rest of these, and I guess I'll start filming again when I have this all done. Okay, so I just got done with injector number 2's wiring, and this is what I meant by I missed some heat shrink. See how the heat shrink actually extends onto the loom right here versus how the loom's just exposed right there. This will fray over time. This is definitely the way to do it. You want to melt the loom back, push it down, and slide heat shrink over it. And this just makes it look, higher quality. It's not going to fray over time, and it's just a better way of doing things. Always strive to do things well, not do things half-assed. Okay, well I got everything all soldered up. It wasn't too bad till you get to like the number 1 lead, which is super short. Like, give me a second. Yeah, a little of this, a little of that. Yeah, so this is the number 1 lead. Basically, it's only about 2 inches long. If I had the harness on the ground, it wouldn't have been so hard. But I'm working on the engine, so it is quite the pain to work on. Now I'm gonna see how I can go about tucking it. So this is realistically kind of an aesthetic mod for me. It worked fine the way it did before, but it just looks so much cleaner. Yeah, it looks good. So what I'm going to do now is try to zip tie all these leads up so that they have slack on them and that they're not breaking under heat and vibration. Okay, so here is the finished product. As you can see, it's super clean. You still see the red and the black, but it's fine. It looks infinitely better than it did before. I kind of had it looking pretty good with the last setup before I put the stupid resistors in there, but I can't really replicate it. So a little bit of stuff has been done on the car since I last recorded the video on it. Moving some stuff out of the way because my car is also a shelf. I built this catch can. You guys saw that. I fixed my welder. I guess the welding issue is more of a gas issue than it was, or gas supply issue than it was me sucking an aluminum issue. I still got to put a breather in it, so I don't know why I painted it, because I got to wire wheel that down and weld a 1-inch pipe right there so I can put a filter on it, because it does need to breathe. And that just barely clears the hood. That breather also just barely clears the hood. But I used the Jegs push lock stuff just because it's cheap and it's fine for this. A lot of cars in FD actually run this, which is pretty funny to me. I tapped my valve cover for 3/8 NPT instead of 3/8 BSPT because the British pipe thread stuff is useless in the States. You can't get anything for it. And I got a 5/8 barb, which is the equivalent of Jegs push lock. So that's all nice and set up. And then over here, we've got basically this is the overflow. This actually needs to get pushed back a little bit more. That's why this is loose. But the baffles in the S13 valve cover suck pretty bad. So even when you're just sitting here revving the engine, the oil that supplies to the cams will actually slosh up into the baffle, and spit out. So this just returns down to the block. It's pretty much the factory setup. The factory has a catch can here also in the charcoal canister. But since this is a race car, it doesn't really matter. Pretty much the only thing that should be going through here and here is oil vapor. So we should be good there. So yeah, I mean, this thing's pretty much ready for the ECU and the dash to come back home. Hopefully that'll be about the middle of next week. Yeah, so I tried emailing the place that has my ECU and dash today to get an update, but basically the guy who's working on it is actually out today, so I didn't really get a proper update on it. I feel like I should be talking to you guys, not behind you guys. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I really had planned for this so far. There's some trash in here. I would work on it some more tomorrow, but tomorrow, which is Saturday, I have to go into work and I have to, basically we're putting together our shop car for the upcoming race season, and I'm going to be filming a mini-series on it, kind of like Injector's behind the build stuff, but not quite so cinematic, because the way that management wants it basically is they want it to be current and up to date, and not basically the way Injector did it, where they filmed the entire off season and then released it after testing, which is the way I wanted to do it because that gives me more time to edit and make it nice. But they want the content now because we don't really have content now to share. So yeah, I'll be doing that every Saturday, making that overtime so I can actually afford to build this car. And tomorrow I am getting my tires mounted on my wheels. I'm getting used tires just because the car basically just needs to roll around and do burnouts. I'm not going to be, enduro racing it or anything. And I'm also getting a new tattoo, so I'm going to fill out my forearm. Maybe I'll remember to show the artwork kind of rendering here. But yeah, I'll be going to a local tattoo shop where the guy does pretty good work. And, everybody's recommended me to him, so I'm going to give him a shot. I never actually spent money on a good tattoo artist before. I've always kind of had a bad habit of just going to whatever tattoo artist is available. And a lot of my tattoos are actually Friday the 13th tattoos, so they're only like $20, so yeah. And then I have the one on my forearm, which isn't that good. I kind of regret getting it, but at the same time, I'm kind of happy I got it. It was a very odd time in my life, and it felt very liberating to get, we'll just say that. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it, unless I remember to do some more stuff, and then I'll film that and put it here. So I'm going to get on that. The camera battery is actually dying right now, so if this is goodbye, goodbye, and thank you guys for watching.